Did you enjoy, right off the bat, we're talking AFCON, and the final that was Senegal finally winning an African title, have been chasing it for a while. They were in the final, memorably, 2002, same year they made the World Cup quarterfinals. And after all these years, they captain in 2002, now they coach, and Sadio Mane and the crew lead them to the AFCON title. So, to you, Chuck, first of all, what do you make of the final, and what are your overall impressions of the tournament?
I think the final, as you would expect in a lot of finals, it was a cagey affair. Senegal started off very well in terms of pressuring Egypt. They got early chances. They should have converted the penalty. They should have scored on a number of occasions. I mean, Mane was a key culprit. I guess it's somewhat fitting if you would say that he scored the winning penalty in the shootout. But it was a cagey affair. It wasn't the best game of the AFCON, which is okay, because in a lot of tournaments, the final isn't the best game of the entire tournament. It happens quite often that's the case. But my overall impression of AFCON, I like the fact that, I don't know, maybe this particular time I was paying attention to it, and I know Klopp didn't mean it that way when he said it was a little tournament in Africa, but I was looking at it in terms of how was it hosted, what does it look like, and I think when we were criticized for hosting World Cup, remember people were saying it was too westernized. There was no flavor of Africa when the World Cup came to South Africa, which is arguable, depending on who you ask, basically. But I think Africa shone quite bright in that tournament. You saw it was really an African tournament. And what I liked about the AFCON is that, as much as I didn't watch all the games, not all the games were exciting, but there was little else that was more interesting than AFCON when it was AFCON time. Even the international break that they took, I didn't even know who played who and why. I didn't even care because the AFCON was on. One thing I will say about the AFCON as well is that there's a lot of good teams. I didn't know what to expect exactly because I wasn't watching the AFCON qualifiers or the World Cup qualifiers from the other teams, but Cameroon is a hell of a good team. Ivory Coast is good. Nigeria is good. So, watching those teams, let me rather say this, the opening game set the tone for AFCON. Burkina Faso against Cameroon, that was a humdinger. The goals in that match, Vincent Abubakar, that was an amazing watch. So for me, I was happy with that tournament. I think it was well put on. It was well hosted as well, as much as there was that stadium incident which marred the tournament. But I think it was a good month.
I don't know if I'm on board with everything that you said. I think in terms of the logistics, yes, in terms of the fact that it was on our TV screens. And that sounds strange, perhaps, unless you put it up against the backdrop of us not having had the Champions League nor the other lesser tournament for the African clubs on our screens. When even one of our teams is playing, you have to go find some dodgy link somewhere on the internet to watch it, or you have to rely on the club that is playing, linking you to their Facebook page. And it was a good show for the first, this being the first tournament that Patrice Motsepe, the new president of CAF, was running. And also at the same time, you've got Samuel Eto'o, who's the president of the Cameroonian Federation. And in terms of hosting, I think they can be proud. The Cameroonian nation can be proud, the federation, Samuel Eto'o and his team. But in terms of what happened on the field of play, there were a lot of good teams on paper. There were a lot of good players, because at this point in time, there are a lot of African stars who are stars globally. And when they then come come back to the continent, they come into the African teams, the national teams, and they're playing in the AFCON. There are expectations I have. Those expectations being that these guys are supposed to shine, the stars are supposed to shine. And I take, for example, Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast, for me, when I looked at Ivory Coast and the team that they had, the stars that they assembled, they should have been. They've got Sangare in midfield with Kessie. They've got Pepe, who has not been playing much at Arsenal, but he's still a very good player. They've got a front. Halle is playing for the Ivory Coast. They bring on Wilfred Zaha off of the bench, and it was disappointing. In terms of, okay, the expectation might not be that they should go on to win it because they've been knocked out of World Cup qualifiers themselves, which is disappointing. Same thing, I look at Nigeria. Nigeria is a team also filled with stars, but at the time of reckoning, they did not show up. I can even point out to someone like Mo Salah. sure, this is not Liverpool, and I don't even know how Egypt got to the final. They fluked their way to the final because their last 3 games, all of them went to extra time, and somehow they came through those matches and ended up in the final. And in the final, they went to penalties. And I was thinking to myself, man, it will be an injustice if they win this. But they didn't. I think that was the fair outcome. But even how we got to that outcome with the match that was played and extra time and then down to penalties, it wasn't the most exciting of football that I've watched in recent times.
You wouldn't say it was exciting, but you didn't watch the key games, I think.
There were some games. For example,
like the
third place,
yes.
fourth playoff. But the thing about that is there's nothing that you're playing for at that point. You get a bronze medal, but no one ever really remembers that. People struggle to remember who was defeated in the final. So what happens? You get a bronze medal, for Cameroon and their people, because it's at home. It's a big deal. But even going into that match, the star of the tournament, in my opinion, Abu Bakr, he was not even in the starting lineup, to show you how important that match was. So they were free and it was flowing. And Cameroon's first match as well, I was impressed by that. I was impressed by Cameroon, tell you that, and their attacking sense of football. But overall, there were so many games which were just 1-0 or 0-0, and those were mind-numbing, I have to say.
Look, I agree with not everything was glittered with awe and talent and creativity, and there are games like that. It's like watching Russia against Iceland. It's bound to be a bore. But I mean,
you see, Chuck.
But Jay, there were upsets. There were Cape Verde. Up until Cape Verde beat Bafana, I didn't know that they were a footballing nation and they were dangerous. But they were troublesome to lots of teams from the group stages all the way to the last 16. So they were dangerous. There were minnows causing upsets. That for me is Comoros. Yeah, I mean, and then their player with that amazing free kick is like, dude, I didn't know you had something special like that in that part of the world. So for me, dog, I think if I were to say it's rare, apart from Champions League, because there are lots of teams that we know of in terms of their setup, in terms of their participation in the league and what the current team looks like and what they are doing in their own leagues. It's hard to have a lot of excitement behind the tournament, apart from maybe 4 or 5 teams, which we named as the main contenders: about Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Senegal, Cameroon, Egypt. Those are the perennial favorites, right? But JJJ, like, never mind what they're playing for third place, which is not really important, but the game was exciting.
Yes, the game was exciting.
Yeah, so
nothing bad to say against that game.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that generally speaking, I think it was hosted well. I don't go away from the tournament thinking, could have watched something better, could have been at the Euros. I feel quality wise, like for me, if I were to ask you this question, what do you expect from people from the teams that you've seen in the AFCON at the World Cup? Because for me, you're smiling already. You're about to say you don't expect much.
Finish your That's where I'm going with this, though.
All right, but from what we've seen, Jay, fine, Algeria fell off in terms of them being the defending champions, and they played well with the qualifiers. Yeah. But when they got to the tournament, it didn't quite happen. Nah? But when you look at Cameroon and how well they played, they're very good around the ball. They take time and they build their passes and all that stuff. Nigeria, I think, looks good, except for issues here and there. But if I were to put up Senegal and put up Cameroon, do you not think we've got somewhat of a shot in terms of going to beyond Africa, going beyond the quarters? Do you think we could have someone in the last 4?
I mean, it could happen because that's the nature of tournament football, and once you get to the knockout stages. But if I'm not mistaken, the last World Cup, no African team made it past the group stages, right? And that's regression. An African team was in the quarterfinals in 1990. The next time it was in 2002, and then the next time it was in 2010. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't happened. Haven't progressed beyond the quarterfinals, and at this point are trying to just get out of the group stages. And if you're asking me, based on what I saw in this tournament, am I crazy about the chances of some of these teams to go to the World Cup and come into a quarterfinal matchup against Argentina or Italy or England, and they come out of that match with the win? I'm not. I really am not, because what is it that I saw in this tournament and with any particular team that makes me think to myself, well, the teams over there in Europe or in South America are having nightmares watching this. And here's the thing, Chuck. I believe there is enough quality. As I'm saying, when I look at an Ivory Coast, I'm like, what the heck is wrong with you guys with these stars? You should have one of the better chances and not even upsetting some of these teams in Europe or in South America, matching up with them. And if they come out with a win, you're thinking to yourself, well, all of these guys play in Europe. You know, all these guys play in the big 5 leagues in Europe, so they are the equals of the opponents who would be playing in Europe. So it wouldn't be a shock from that point of view, just because there's an African nation attached to the team. But for whatever reason, when they do don their national team colors, I don't see these guys at the level where I see them weekend in, weekend out when they're playing in Europe. And that is disappointing. And that is why I'm not confident that they are going to go to the World Cup and pose a chance to be one of the final 4 teams, or maybe even win it.
I've got my eye on Cameroon. What I saw was a special team. Nothing much to say if they'll go on and win it or be in the semis, but I think they will trouble a lot of teams. I think they're better than what I expected, better than what I anticipated. And looking at the fact that Portugal struggled to qualify, Italy struggled to qualify, I think there are teams who are not quite up to speed in terms of their progress, in terms of where they would want to be coming into the time of the World Cup. So I think a lot of teams could be kept caught napping. I think this, for me, was a good tournament, if you could say, as a precursor to the World Cup. If you guys want to get ready, assemble a team. Along with the qualifiers, here's a big tournament. See if you battle ready for the World Cup. And for me, having seen Cameroon specifically, for me, in terms of the brand of football that they play, Burkina Faso as well, they don't have many stars, but I mean, they are people who are in contention. I don't know how far Burkina Faso are in terms of qualifiers. I don't know if they even made it. Let me just double check if they're still in the running in the last round of qualifiers. No, they are not even there. So my money could be on Cameroon, or maybe even Nigeria. I think they could put something together in terms of getting out of the group stages and doing a bit more.
Maybe they can. We'll see. Because if I think back, for example, to 2002, when Senegal did what they did, it was shocking. Because first of all, they put down France, the defending champions, in that first game. And then in the second round, if I'm not mistaken, they knocked out Sweden. Sweden at the time, not really a contender. Forget not really.
And
not
you
a
said
contender
they'd come from a
at all.
second place finish at the AFCON, right?
Yeah. So when going into the tournament, and there have been expectations of certain teams, Cameroon came into the 2002 World Cup being African champions with the expectation that this generation with Mboma and Eto'o and Jeremy and the likes are going to go beyond the quarterfinals, get to the semifinals. And it didn't happen. You know, when Ghana made it to the quarterfinals in 2010, I didn't expect that. Because they only made their first World Cup in 2006 when they upset us with my favorite African player of all time, Appiah, leading them. And then when they get to 2010, it's like, okay, they are a good team, but did not see them being on the brink of a Luis Suarez handball from being in the semifinals. But then they didn't follow that up in 2014. And that's the thing, that you look at these teams and, okay, they may have had a good tournament now in the AFCON, but can I have expectations that they're going to get at the biggest stage in world football and they are going to sweep teams away, or they're going to cause these upsets where you might just join a bandwagon saying this African team might actually win the whole thing? I don't know if we're quite there yet. And it's not, as I'm saying, it's not a lack of talent. It's just not coming together within the national teams.
I think you've got a valid point in that it's never been done before. But I think with what I saw with my eyes, I think it was one of the things where usually when you watch African football, you can tell the difference between the European standard and where we are. But I think with this tournament, for me, my eyes were opened up. Hakim is not finding it easy to overlap and have fun. Mo Salah is struggling in the tournament. Mane is struggling in the tournament, not because that they don't have the quality, but this is a different kettle of fish. It's a different test. So I believe that in the tournament, it does stand them in good stead to be able to do that, and rather the teams to be able to negate the threat that is Mane, that is Salah, that is Hakim, those who are European stars, and still hold their own. Because Abu Bakr is playing, if I'm not mistaken, in Saudi Arabia, and it's one of those things, man, where it has me thinking as well that a lot of PSL stars or African stars, whenever we move abroad, it's rare that we go to the big 5 leagues in Europe and Spelala. And I'm thinking to myself, but Abu Bakr is good enough to enter, maybe not play for Arsenal or a City, but a Burnley might have him, Hellas Verona might have him, but he's somewhere lost there in Saudi Arabia. But as well, I know to the opposite, we could say is that Percy Tau was our star in South Africa and then didn't quite work out for him in one of those big leagues. But for me, if ever there was a time in terms of my eye test and what I've seen in the tournament, I think Cameroon can do something in the World Cup.